just go for the whole round and then you can come in with all your questions. So please prepare to fire your questions. But perhaps it's better that we do the whole round and then go to the questions and answers, because otherwise we will not leave this room.
Maybe a few comments on this wholly complex issue, and I try to realize the enormity of the questions you just raised. Let me step back for a second and try to define for you what I mean by transition, because you all talk about transition as a process which have lasted already 20 years, and there's a big debate even in economic literature and in sociology and in political science whether transition has been finished by now or not. And it's an important issue, because if not, then the mentality should also be kind of different. If yes, then there might be differences, but we should find them somewhere else. For me, transition was at least three-faceted or three-phased phenomenon. One was obviously the economic type of transformation to turn basically non-market orientated system into a market system. Central planning was not that strong by the end in many countries anymore, not even in the Soviet Union, but definitely still it was not a market economy in the sense that supply did not adjust to demand. There was no autonomy for enterprises and managers for those enterprises to make a decision to adjust supply to demands of the markets, and that was the biggest shortcoming of the non-market system, that basically it was a production for the sake of production rather than for the sake of satisfying ultimately consumer demand and consumer choices. And that was the biggest reason why legitimacy finally eroded, because it was not possible to meet those legitimate demands which finally even the Communist Party admitted as having been legitimate. On the other hand, of course, democratization is an important issue, and in this case we can, of course, discuss endlessly what is the so-called inflection point before which you do not talk about democracy, after which you can say it's democracy. In those countries which we are now talking about, the new members of the European Union, I can fairly say that by having met the so-called Copenhagen criteria for joining the European Union, these countries really traveled the bold path, and they have not only just the facade of democracy, but they also have really a good part of the internal legal, sociological checks and balances, if not the culture. The culture is still not there in many respects. For democracy, you need democrats. We have too many of non-democrats at this point in time. But nevertheless, in small open economies and societies which are already part of a larger framework of civilization, it is obviously true that even the external factors supporting democracy from within are very, very strong. But don't forget, there are two other phenomena which are important in case of these 10 countries which we are talking about, basically, including Romania, Bulgaria, but not including Cyprus and Malta, which were now under the communist system. So we are talking about 10 new member states. One is, of course, joining the European Union, which was a very, very tall order for these countries which did not inherit a competitive economic system, and the imminent reaction to the political changes was almost a complete collapse of their economy. So in many countries you had 20%, 30%. In the case of Russia, 50% decline. We are not talking about Russia, but in many countries the decline was very, very huge after the political changes. And it's interesting to see now a repetition of that. in the Baltic states, which were thought to be one of the most successful countries, you have now 18% decline of GDP. So it's almost a warlike situation in certain countries, and that's not the best recipe for strengthening democracy and the mentality of people in believing democracy. And last but not least, I think many people simply cannot, because it's very difficult to distinguish between the impact of Europeanization and globalization. The whole European Union is under a serious threat of being sidelined and pushed aside by the US and China, if you will. There is a very, very strong undercurrent, and not even undercurrent, but a very clear, visible process of former emerging economies, China, India, Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil, you name them, who take over the geopolitical, geostrategic importance these days. And as a consequence, the whole European Union is shrinking, at least in relative terms, because it has very few factors for increasing its growth potential. This creates a siege mentality in many countries in Central and Eastern Europe. And people, as a consequence, cannot necessarily distinguish between the positive impact of Brussels and the negative impact of globalization. Of course, it is easy to say that, while Hungary did not choose to be a member of the Soviet Empire, there was a referendum on joining NATO and on joining the European Union. So tough luck if you made your choice in the wrong way, you are still stuck with it. But you can leave. It's not a compulsory thing to be part of the European Union. But everybody knows that to be part of the European Union is still better than living it and being outside in the cold, so to speak, when you cannot benefit even from those parts which are universally accepted as beneficial impact of the European Union. In this respect, I agree with you that the mental distinction or division is not that great. The mental division is more within the country rather than among countries in this respect. I also see many people who just hate the European Union, and there are many good reasons why to hate the European Union. I even have, I can confess here, mixed feelings with the European Parliament. It was looking like much nicer from the outside. Now I can see the bureaucratic handling and the horse trading and all those non-transparent ways of sometimes even cheating the electorate, But at the same time, the big question is what is the alternative? What kind of alternative arrangement we can conceive, or else how can we improve the present setup for the whole European Union in order to make it more competitive on the one hand and more democratic on the other.